Welcome back to The Contrarian, everybody. I'm Logan. Today I'll be talking about another de-dollarization trend that is occurring and actually another unlikely customer that could be switching more to dealing with China in their own currency, the yuan. And it's unlikely in that it is a NATO nation that is actually saying this. Now we'll have to see what their actions actually look like, but it's France that's actually saying that they're beginning to question their sole dependence on the dollar, and that they will likely deal with China in their local, national currency, the yuan. So this is an unlikely development, and that so far, we've seen Saudi Arabia, Iran, Brazil, and other BRICS nations be kind of the primary drivers behind this de-dollarization trend, which is quite simply just seeking to have exchange with each other between these nations, not using dollars. So using something else, whether that's the BRICS kind of basket of currencies that they've talked about a lot, whether that's actually using the Chinese yuan exclusively, whatever it is, it's just getting around the dollar using that in some way. So it's somewhat surprising to see France talking about this now. This just came out yesterday on Zero Hedge. Tyler Durden wrote about it. But basically, Chinese President Emmanuel Macron saying that Europe should reduce its dependence on the US dollar and seek strategic autonomy. So, there's a lot of stuff in this article that you can read for yourself. I'm not going to read the entire thing. I'll just touch on the main bullet points. A lot of it does have to do just with the title itself of Macron and Xi Jinping meeting last week and discussing the nature of the dollar trade that has gone on for a while, and apparently kind of coming to an agreement that they will be trading more in their respective currencies, just not using the dollar. So basically, France wants nothing to do with World War III, emphasizing that Europe must employ strategic autonomy, presumably led by France, to become a third superpower. And presumably the third superpower refers to the US being 1, China being 2, and then Europe being 3. So I guess that's encouraging for sure to see that Europe is beginning to kind of break with the extreme kind of push that the US military and some European militaries have had towards the Russia-Ukraine conflict, just extreme pushes towards what nobody wants, a nuclear conflict. So that is encouraging to see that there is some question asking beginning to occur about that narrative. But it's also interesting to see that Xi Jinping and Macron, even though there's this conflict going on that China is somehow involved with, and they are kind of involved with the Russia-Ukraine conflict in terms of helping Russia out a little bit with it. But so it is interesting to see the meeting between Macron and Xi Jinping, because it is kind of maybe kind of a backdoor meeting between what maybe NATO would have wanted to have happened. I'm sure they might not have wanted Macron to be doing this, or maybe other European leaders from doing this in the future. So it is interesting to see that this is starting to take place. But basically, Macron kind of emphasizing that the dollar has had profound privileges that it has given to the United States, that has been abused at times, and most visibly recently it has been abused in terms of cutting off entire countries. Even the sanctioning power that it has given the United States it's given them given us, I should say, a lot of leeway to just employ our political views around the world, kind of regardless of what the rest of the world has wanted. And regardless of what your view is on specific conflicts or issues, it does lead to these nations having a strong emphasis to get off of the dollar. That's a very obvious fact. And so unfortunately, with the level of sanctioning that has happened recently, that has led these other countries to really start looking elsewhere. So this article really does go into how during the talks that they had, the Chinese leader became upset over two things. So Xi Jinping was visibly annoyed for being held responsible for the Ukraine conflict, and he downplayed his recent visit to Moscow. He said, one source who was present in the room, he was clearly enraged by the U.S. and very upset over Taiwan, by the Taiwanese president's transit through the United States. And so, yes, he is talking more about Taiwan, and then the emphasis on ditching the dollar. And for Xi Jinping, this is probably a more pertinent issue than it is for Macron, because he's obviously trying to still appease NATO and the United States as much as he can. But yeah, Macron is basically suggesting that Europe should kind of try to get along with both of the global superpowers at this point, not just one of them, which is probably an intelligent thing for Europe to be doing at this point. But no, a very interesting development to see. Just broadly speaking, we will need to see where this goes. Now, does this mean that the dollar is going to undergo hyperinflation overnight, that it's not going to be used for global trade at all going forward? No, it just means that there's going to be more alternatives out there. And this does have profound impacts for standard of living in the United States, for the U.S. kind of military pressure that can exist around the world. Both of these things are going to change slowly, but they will undergo big changes in the coming years. So, for example, there will be a lot less ability for the United States Central Bank just to finance whatever debt they want, regardless of fiscal responsibility, regardless of how the money is being spent. There cannot be this kind of extreme, extravagant spending without there being profound impacts on the dollar. So there will be a lot more issues with regards to when these other central banks aren't buying dollars, aren't buying treasury bonds, and in fact they're dumping dollars in some cases. Suddenly the U.S. central bank, the Fed, is probably going to have to backstop and buy up a lot of this unwanted debt. And so, it's going to have profound impacts. Inflation is definitely going to be a sticky issue going forward in the coming years, even though I think that we're probably heading for a strongly disinflationary period this coming year, just with the economic downturn that is currently coming, in my opinion. After that, you could definitely see a resurgence of inflation as an issue. Also, this could just be kind of language on Macron's part, on Europe's part, to try to appease China. We will really need to see how much action is behind their words here. Another interesting thing I thought of is Germany might have more reasons than France at this point to be more on the forefront of ditching the dollar. Obviously, we saw what happened with Nord Stream, and the very likely culprit of that being the United States Special Operations and Norway. So, if anything, Germany might have more of an incentive at this point to be on the forefront of ditching the dollar. So, Germany is maybe also a likely candidate for that as well. And yeah, it is interesting to see how maybe one of the agendas behind the Russia-Ukraine conflict of trying to break up NATO might be working in a certain way. So it's just very interesting to see that a NATO nation is kind of starting to question their sole allegiance to the dollar, to the United States. And so, yeah, I just really wanted to bring this up. This is a very interesting thing to take a look at. If you have any comments regarding this, just feel free to put it in the comment section down below. Yeah, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. I really like talking about things like this, big picture changes that are taking place. So all that being said, let me know what you think, and I hope to see you all again at some point.